how do you level up so you feel your best? That to me is the quintessential metaphor and demand of ourselves to be extraordinary, right? Because if you just go through the motions or you do what you're comfortable with, the excellence demands a little bit of edge. Excellence demands you push beyond what's easy or what's your natural strength or what you just could do and get away with and says, no, 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 what's that next level for me? That's real excellence over the long term. And I wanted to start with that expectation right off the bat, like you need to have that thinking coming in today. Plus you need to be doing the self-analysis, because today, as usual, I'll challenge you, I'll cajole you, I'll tease you, I'll share my own struggles and challenges along the way, because it is not easy leading a worldwide community of high performers. The other day I was in an airport and someone came up to me and said, Brendon, you look rough. And I was like, well, thank you very much. And I said, well, I just finished a 4-day seminar. He says, oh, okay, well, you do those all the time. I said, yeah, but I finished a 4-day seminar. I went and opened 2 new businesses, flew to another 4-day seminar, and all these were across the country. And I was delivering the seminar mostly by myself. And people were like, how are you doing that? A huge piece of it comes from the mentality we're going to talk about today. The simple things that you can do to make sure you are setting yourself up for excellence, not exhaustion, for excellence, not mediocre, for excellence, something you can have pride about, something you can feel good about inside. I know many of you are perfectionists, and that's not the conversation today. Excellence is not the same as perfectionists, right? I think anyone who really believes themselves to be a perfectionist tends to be really hurting themselves. They are hurting themselves because that mentality that it has to be perfect, while they take a lot of pride in it, it actually ends up compromising their health and their relationships. Where excellence, I'd rather you say, I'm a person of excellence than I'm a perfectionist. Because usually those who are perfectionists, they have to ultimately compromise. They have to compromise their health, they have to compromise their relationships, they have to compromise their timelines, because most perfectionists are operating off of fear. They're offering based on, well, if I do that and it's not perfect, there's rejection, there's ruin, there's regret. Where excellence is getting stuff done. There's a momentum to excellence that is lacking in perfectionists, right? A perfectionist might get something done, but they get one thing done each year, and a person of excellence gets 6 things done, and as equal progress and equal breakthroughs. So I know some of you are like, this is me, I'm a perfectionist. I'm like, no, actually, I think it might be really important that you listen and tune in today, because we might be able to add some value that helps you reimagine who you are and what you are capable of. Because listen, if you don't have the momentum in your life you want right now, your mindset and your behaviors might be preventing you from delivering your best. If you don't sense a real momentum, like there's some kind of movement at base, there's something going on. You feel like that tremor of excitement inside because something big is coming up. It's because maybe you've been fighting and reacting and you've been in the trenches, but excellence kind of requires you to look above the trenches and have some vision once in a while. The first value of excellence is this: you have to play the long game. You have to play the long game. Now, I know it's like, yeah, I know that. But listen, if you don't have the momentum you want in your life right now, you haven't been playing the long game. If you've been too stressed or too burned out, or you've overcommitted yourself, you're not playing the long game. If your health sucks, not playing the long game. If you're wrecking relationships, not playing the long game. If you don't have a vibrant, amazing community of peers around you supporting your dream, cheering you on, not playing the long game. Because playing the long game does not just take what shows up, it architects the future. Oh, write it down. Playing the long game doesn't take what just shows up, it's architecting the future. And I think a lot of people live mediocre versus excellent lives because they weren't playing the long game. They weren't thinking like, okay, 3 years out, how do I scale? 3 years out, how do I stand out? 3 years out, how do I have success unparalleled in this industry? Because you know, and I both know, many of you are here because you're in transition and something new is coming along and you're trying something new. You got a new hobby, a new way to make money, a new way to serve. And sometimes in that transition, you go into survival mode. Survival mode is not the same as the excellence mentality, is it? Right? Survival mode is, let me take what's here, let me do the bare minimum to survive, versus think strategically and play the long game. Now, I said a few things that I think are really important. Like, let's take that big old thing called burnout. Most people, when they've become burned out, it didn't happen immediately. It happened bit by bit by bit. I talked with my coaches this morning about that. It's like when someone's in burnout, don't think it was one big project that tipped them over the edge. It was little decisions, bit by bit by bit by bit by bit, where they gave away their time, they gave away their freedom, they overcommitted, they didn't say yes, they didn't say no, they didn't sort of like lay out the turf, they didn't set their boundaries, and over a period of time, they burned out. The problem, which I think you all know, is that if you're a high performer, you can survive on burnout for a long time. A lot of burnouts, you know, they're operating at a high level of efficiency. I mean, they're burned out, but they can go 6-7 months at that. And they don't take the time to step back and recharge throughout the day, not once in a while on a vacation, throughout the day. They're not using transitions to recharge like we talk about in the book. They're not using those moments to like, whew, reset, recharge, go at it again. And they don't do that because they believe they're invincible. They can't see all these decisions adding up to exhaustion, adding up to burnout, adding up to running out. Like always looking out a few months is part of excellence, isn't it? Otherwise, you can deliver excellence once and then you crash and burn. And many of you know this. Your success has been up and down. And really, if you look at the peaks and the valleys weren't successes. The peaks and the valleys were crashes. And that's how you know a person of excellence. Did they have this rhythm, this scale, this, even if there were some like lower points, were those rhythms of excellence? Or was it boom, launch that thing, crash. Boom, do that thing, great, crash. And it was just up, down, and it was just crash, 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 crash. A lot of people, I can look over the last 10 years, I'm like, your last 10 years wasn't defined by momentum or excellence. Your last 10 years was defined by like survival. It was defined by like luck. It was defined by crashes and burns and oh my God, you must be so tired. And you're like, yes, Brendon, I am. And that's why this is an important conversation today. If you know you're a person of excellence, and if it's true, I would not see a rhythm of crashing and burning. I would not see a rhythm of burns and busts, burning out, failures, and exhaustion. And it's really hard because I know, trust me, like there's so many nights I'm like, oh my God, if I just stay awake for 4 more hours, I can get these projects done. And you know what? And then I'm a complete idiot 72 hours later. I know it will catch up with me. Those who play the long game don't compromise in the short game because they know it catches up later. And that catch up is a devil. It is a bear. It is a beast. It knocks you down. And what happens is compromise 3 hours here. But then because that compromise 3 hours here, you're knocked off your feet 3 days over here. So if you'd taken the 3 hours to recharge, you wouldn't be worthless for 3 days in the middle of the week, right? I want you to have steady rhythm. That's what we call high performance, that ability to have long-term success while maintaining your well-being and your health, my friends. You so deserve that. Resilience. If we've ever needed this conversation, it's probably right about now. People have really struggled to move through the dramatic changes we've all been experiencing, not just in the last year, but if you look at just the craziness of the last 5 years or the last 10 years, we've had technical disruptions, economic disruptions, pandemics, we've had major political shifts around the world. Change is always accelerating. It's compounding each and every single year as the human body is being more connected to one another. It's an incredible challenge at the macro level to deal with all the changes that we face, when sometimes it's scary, uncertain, discouraging, frustrating, when you witness hate, when you witness things that just don't vibe with your personal values or your socioeconomic beliefs or even your faith beliefs. All of that can really knock a person down. And resilience is that promise of the human spirit. The promise of the human spirit that it can rise through the most difficult times in life and recapture its sense of aliveness and connection and meaning and move forward with great faith and optimism. We know these things as we hear about resilience all the time. So today I'm hoping that I can provide a unique perspective on it from my vantage point. I think that a lot of resilience and our ability to do that is stymied or hampered or slowed down by the fact that we get hurt. We experience emotional pain, trauma, sadness, difficulty. And when we're in those days and nights where we feel that it's darkest, it's really hard to get up and go again. And it's not that most people lack mental strength or mental tenacity, which has become very popular in the last couple of years of like, oh, well, they're not mentally strong or resilient. It's like, oh, well, let's not forget the difficulties that people face in life. Because a big part of resilience is empathy. A big part of resilience is allowing ourselves to feel that. Allowing ourselves to feel those challenging days and those dark nights and those frustrating moments. Allowing ourselves to be like, oh yeah, it's all right if I'm not perfect. I'm struggling right now. Resilience always begins with acknowledgement of the difficulty, acknowledgement of the challenge, acknowledgement of the struggle of life, and acknowledgement of the inevitable hardships. Because picking yourself back up or remaining strong and optimistic through difficult times, that's super hard if we don't first and foremost allow ourselves to sense it, feel it, recognize it. And the issue is, when people do sense and feel and recognize it, unconsciously or unconsciously, they often make a mistake. To become resilient, we have to remember, and you're going to write this down, we have to remember that hurt and pain are indicator lights, not the wheel. And let me draw out this metaphor for everybody today, and I'll go deeper on it, because I've introduced this on social media in the past, and people are always like, whoa, that's a huge concept. And this idea is that when we're young or we're lacking awareness, or we haven't done our personal development and we're just going through the motions of life, a lot of our unconscious behavior becomes steering ourselves and driving ourselves through or away from pain and hurt. We got hurt when we were teenagers, so we shut down. We felt pain of trauma, so we started doing everything to avoid that versus everything to live life. And so what I use this metaphor as hurt and pain are indicator lights, not the wheel. And that means, imagine you're driving your car, and as you're driving your car, you notice that some of the indicators aren't where you thought they would be. You don't drive the car forever based on one of those lights. You ever have a light go out in your car? Like I had in my car, and I had this indicator light that the parking brake was on, but it wasn't. The light always said the parking brake is on. I mean, I had a 1988 Nissan Sentra, it had like 3 different colors on it because I had wrecked it before. There's Bondo colors on it. It was like orange and red. And this light was always on. Well, I didn't stop because that light was on. I knew that light was important, but I could verify whether or not that thing had to stop my forward momentum or change my destination. And what most people do is when they got hurt or they feel pain, they start gripping the wheel of life and steering only to avoid pain. It's kind of like if you're driving down a road and you steer only to avoid the potholes, you will definitely run off that road. There will be a greater accident, because what's more important in driving is that you have a vision of where you're going, and that the wheel, you, the person at the wheel, you are directing this vehicle of life where you want it to go, not just where you are afraid it might go, and not just away from pain, but rather towards your ultimate vision. And sometimes we lack resilience in life. We are not even conscious of it, because all we're actually doing is never recovering from those indicator lights, and we're driving by the indicator lights. You know, another example I gave this morning, I think on social media, was about, you know, imagine you're a pilot of a plane and you're flying that plane to New York. And you know what? The indicator lights, they show problems. Well, you work to solve the problem of the indicator light, but just because it's windy or you're getting a lot of turbulence, it doesn't mean that when you're going to New York and you get this turbulence, you go, oh my gosh, this is just terrible, I better go where the turbulence isn't, and you end up in Philadelphia. No, you're going to New York. And that having vision for life, having a direction in mind, and being at firm control of the wheel is a important precept to everything we're going to talk about today in resilience and mindset. Meaning, if pain has a hold of that wheel, you're not going to be where you want to be in life. Consciousness, intention, awareness, mindfulness, spirit, soul, future, purpose, mission, whatever you call it, that's got to be at the wheel. When you got hurt and you were 15, that didn't need to dictate your next decade. You didn't need to drive your next decade of your life because of the hurt. You got divorced at 40. You don't need to be at 50 having just been reacting to that indicator light for a whole decade. What you got to go is, oh, okay, this thing happened. It hurt. I had to check in on myself. I had to make sure that I was okay. I had to take care of that problem or take care of myself, but that's not going to direct my map. That's not going to direct where I go. That's not going to make me steal. It's not going to steal my ability to steer my life. And a realization of resilience comes when often we realize, wow, I did pick myself up, but I went in the wrong direction. See, a lot of people actually have tremendous resilience and they never get credit for it. But it was the choices they made next that showed they didn't have ultimate resilience. Because you know what we learn in high performance habits? And I know you all know this, that first habit of highest performing people in the world, which remember, they were also the highest in well-being and positive relationships, was clarity. They had clarity about who they were, where they wanted to go. They had clarity about who they were and where they wanted to go. Think about that for a minute. They had clarity about who they were and where they wanted to go. It's a pretty powerful idea, right? That if I get hurt, or I feel pain, or I feel sadness, and I shut myself down, but I'm able to pick up and go through the week still, yeah, I picked myself up. But if I didn't ask, wait, okay, that wasn't what I expected. That did hurt. But what's it about now? Where do I want to go now? What is my vision? Without that, I'm here to tell you, it's extremely hard to be truly resilient. There's a difference between picking yourself up and getting back at the day and being resilient enough to course correct for what's true to you, to where you want to go. So to be resilient, we have to know in the future, you know what, next time I get discouraged, someone judges me, I get hurt, I'm sad. Next time I experience that, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to remember that's an indicator light to check in with myself. That's an indicator light to check in, see what's meaningful, see what matters to me, and where I'm going to go now. What's the next right action of integrity for me now? What does my future hold for me now? not to now grip the wheel and stay or live in the pain or the hurt or direct ourselves only from the pain and the hurt. Because what resilience is the ability no longer to direct ourselves from the discouragement, the hurt, or the pain. Now, I know this is kind of like an advanced idea in personal development here, and some people will always say, well, yeah, easy for you to say you didn't have this person break your heart, or you didn't have that happen at your job, or you didn't have this happen, in your business. I'm like, well, I probably did, or work with somebody who did. And if I didn't, the good news is 7 billion people on the planet, somebody did. If you keep thinking your hurt and pain is only yours, it only happens to you, then you feel even more isolated and less likely to enter the world again faithfully and confidently. And so don't be one of those people who are like, you don't understand my hurt and pain, because that's a slippery slope into isolationism. That's a slippery slope into withdrawing from the world. It's a slippery slope of closing off your heart when you think other people can't understand. Maybe the immediate people around you who hurt you, they don't understand. But the world at large, they get it. They've been through it. They saw their parent go through it. They saw somebody experience it. And when we can recognize the common human story that's always struggle or progress, we can go, oh, other people struggle too, but they can progress too. And so can you. I call it the 3 E's. Okay, the 3 E's of a relationship. This is when I know a relationship is great and can improve in a conflict situation. So if I'm mediating or counseling or coaching, here's what I do. I watch for, in those initial interactions, when they're coming in, they're describing the problem as an example to me. I watch for the 3 E's. First one, empathy. Empathy. Does it look like the other is listening and is caring what the other person is saying and can understand it even if they don't agree with it? Can they understand it even if they don't agree with it? That's a big one for me. Can they understand it even if they don't agree with it? That to me is empathy. They care that the other person is hurt or confused or upset about something. Like, there's just empathy. Often it's nonverbal. I can see that. The nonverbal stuff is the easiest. But often what people don't understand is a lot of times empathy looks like listening. Even if you don't agree, it can listen, like this can be empathy. Literally, this can be empathy. You think they're crazy, but you're giving them the allowance to speak. It's empathizing enough. Like, we all believe that empathy is warm hugs and sunshine. But a lot of the time, empathy is allowing turn taking, asking a question, waiting, nodding, not arguing. Or it's saying, I heard you say this. I see it this way. It's those simple notes of validation, time, openness make all the difference. Second thing I look for of the 3 E's, the first E is empathy. Second E is enthusiasm. I think enthusiasm is the master of all emotion, right? Even more than love. People are like, you're crazy. I'm like, no. I know lots of people who have love, but there's no enthusiasm in the relationship anymore. There's no intimacy, no pop, no vibrancy, no variety. It's like they care for each other, but there's no energy behind it. I think the energy behind things is enthusiasm. When we're excited about building our life together, or listen, when we're excited about solving this problem together. I remember the first, I was doing a divorce referred mediation. I was in grad school, and I knew this couple was going to survive. It was 5 minutes into this thing because they were just we were so excited to solve this thing together. And I was like, you're gonna be great. I immediately knew. And it was so easy. It was not easy. It was so well resolved because there was enthusiasm. Even if we don't agree, enthusiasm for the solution. Enthusiasm to move out of this crappy time. I love when people do coaching or counseling, and I've talked to therapists who go, oh my gosh, they were so happy to finally share their hatred for each other. They were so enthusiastic to get it out and to talk about it and to start working on it.
the enthusiasm to work on it, the enthusiasm to improve it, the enthusiasm to build that future together, the enthusiasm to resolve it, that is such an indicator of things. So how do you feel? Are you enthusiastic to improve that relationship, to grow it? Are you enthusiastic to go deeper, enthusiastic to do the things for your other who just loves it? Are you enthusiastic about them and their life? So important. Empathy, enthusiasm. And the third one, encouragement. The strongest relationships are built on encouragement, right? We know this from the social sciences. I know many of you guys have heard me recommend, for the last decade, the work by John Gottman and his wife in research and relationships. I love that work. And one of the critical things that came out of that was such a simple distinction that happy couples tend to praise each other 5 times more than they complain or negate. And whether that ratio is true in all relationships across all cultures is probably not super validated. But what I do believe is the simple way to break that down is encourage your partner a lot. A lot. Encourage them, cheer them on. They got a big day, do something. Look here, I got this on this laptop over here from Denise. Can I see that? You guys probably can't see this, dude. No, I'm not gonna show up. It's a Post-it note that she gave me like 6 months ago. I still have it on my computer. It says, I love you, I appreciate you, I know you are doing big things. I love you, I appreciate you, I know you are doing things. It was just a Post-it note she put on my computer in a really particularly difficult week that I was having. And we're both pretty good about leaving little notes around for each other, especially when we're traveling or we'll be apart or something like that. But also throughout the day. Like she put something over there that she likes or she does. I'm like, I love that. Good job. That's amazing. And we don't say that flippantly. Like we were like, that's great. That's amazing. Like we cheer each other on a lot. And I think that's huge. The ability to encourage one another is so vital. So vital. Okay, so the 3 things: empathy, encouragement, empathy, enthusiasm, and encouragement. I look for those, I watch for them. But listen, don't just look for them. Cultivate them. Cultivate them. And if you don't know how to do it, ask your partner. Be like, hey, how can I demonstrate empathy for you more? Hey, how can I bring some enthusiasm in this relationship? Hey, do you feel like I encourage you enough? What could I do better? Because ultimately, all these things we're talking about, remember, you have to do together. It's about the relationship first. You're going to build this life together. The most important phrase to me, if I was advising him, was like, you're co-creating your future together. Co-creation. People support what they create. You create it together and you support it together. And that's everything. So it's never like, I'm mad at you for this reason. It's like, we were in that situation, didn't seem to go good. What can we do better? It's the we story, not just the me story. It's the understanding that we must communicate together, plan together, and work together to build the ideal future together, to build the energy, co-create the energy together. These things matter, but they're open dialogues, and you don't have to be right, and they don't have to be right. You get a turn, they get a turn. You understand if they're not going to agree with you. You understand they're not. It's fluid, it's dynamic, and that's what makes a relationship great versus it has to be this way or it has to be that way or we butt heads. How are we going to set our emotional tone in this chaos? How are we going to find our strength, our center, and project goodness and compassion at a time when it is desperately needed? How are we going to hold the line in our businesses so that we don't overreact and going one direction when we ought to be in another? How do we manage all of this today is my joy to talk with you about. Number 1 is the decision that I will always be the one to remain centered amid the chaos. And I have worked on myself and I have taught myself that for pretty much 25 years. I've worked on that at a very steady pace. When everyone's freaking out, I take a bunch of deep breaths. I connect with my breath. I make sure that I'm keeping perspective. But ultimately that decision to I will be centered amid this means for me that I will choose the emotional tone and my attitude
as I am dealing with uncertainty or chaos. I remember years ago, I was doing an event and a person in the back of the room had a seizure. And literally they fell out of their chair, and on the ground they started having a full physical reaction to the seizure as well, where they were shaking, and it was terrifying for the people around them. And I was kind of at the beginning of my career, and I saw it happen. It was almost in slow motion. And could you imagine, you're on your stage? I mean, put yourself there. You're in front of, hundreds or thousands of people, and all of a sudden somebody is, falling over and having a full seizure in front of the whole audience. The whole audience literally starts looking back. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. People are standing up. Oh my God, oh my God. Total panic sets in the room. And I remember standing up there, and I have this on video where at first, my first reaction is like this, kind of like shocked, just like everybody else, like, whoa. And then I kind of look over, and instantaneously in my mind, I go, Brendon, you have to be in charge here. I didn't want to be in charge. I had to be in charge. And my mind immediately said, two choices here. Join the panic, or stay stable and strong and present and connected with what's really happening. And so that decision, I'm going to say centered amid this, made me immediately also decide I need to center the audience. So I asked the entire audience, I just announced, I said, everyone sit down. And everyone just kind of looked, I said, sit down. And everybody, they sit down. And I said, please sit down, because your panic and your chaos right now is not serving the energy of this person who needs healing. Sit down. Be quiet. Everyone, please close your eyes so my team can address this situation. Please close your eyes, and let's put some positive energy and prayer in the room for this person who needs our attention right now. They don't need negativity and fear in the room. Let's put some love and prayer. Let's send some energy. So please close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and remember, you can choose to contribute good energy to the situation. And so I had everyone close and their eyes, take a few deep breaths, and meditate or send prayer back to this person as my team was clearing that row and getting to this person, so that when the paramedics would arrive, that person could be removed. Now, here's the deal. I knew I had like 20 minutes, at least, before we could get a paramedic probably at that spot in the seminar. And I thought, how am I going to buy 20 minutes? People are going to start freaking out. And I realized, no, if I set the emotional tenor in this room on purpose, and if I ask of others to find the best within themselves, if I ask of others to take a breath, if I ask of others to be responsible for the energy they are projecting into this space, if I ask of that, and if I demonstrate that, we'll make it through this moment. And that might not seem like a big deal, but I really believe the energy in that room either was serving this man as he was having a seizure or was making it worse. Imagine here he is having this unbelievable, stressful, life-threatening situation. And if all around him, everybody is screaming in chaos, the body feels that, The body and the mind feels the energy of what is around it. And so if that is true, let us all be responsible for the energy we are projecting right now. I've seen friends hop online and something's happening, and what are they doing? They're contributing to the chaos. They're posting snarky comments. There's sarcasm, blame, vitriol, anger. And I'm not here to say that we can't use our social mediums to contribute to an argument or to make a case, but every word has a tone to it. And the tone that we are setting in reply to chaos either furthers the chaos or it levels it. And the more of us who choose to be even, tempered, thoughtful, caring, compassionate, the values that we would all hope to have as a global citizenry, the more that we will judiciously take action in a thoughtful way. That's the hope. And whether you believe that or not, I hope that you'll hear this first practice. Your family needs to see you centered, calm, strong, and assured in chaos. Otherwise, we are passing down panic to another generation. It's sad, in my view, that we have a world that is so connected, so potentially capable, so well informed, and yet we still have people who overreact. Now, I'm not saying that overreaction isn't something you would anticipate, but there's a difference between overreaction as in taking action to overprotect, like doing something useful to shore up things, versus an emotional overreaction of fear. You can deal with really difficult situations without the negative range of blame, vitriol, hate, and anger. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm just here today to touch base with you. You can set that emotional tenor. Let's all do a better job at that. Let me give you a couple examples of how I'm doing it right now. To stay centered amid chaos, you also have to stay a little distanced from chaos, even as it is happening. I'll give you an example of how I'm doing it. And many of you guys know I have 4 major companies that I'm either the principal in or one of the principal investors in. And for me, like lots of different teams around the world, and obviously you've seen here, we have a global community. Well, for me, because I'm constantly being hit up on this phone by people from literally around the world, and people count on me to advise their companies. So what do? I don't engage the chaos all day. Instead, I work my plan. And many of you already know how I do that with my morning routines. My morning routine doesn't change, still stays steady. Wake up, center my mind, plan my day, open up my body. But I also do simple things right now. Right now, listen, I'm not checking in my phone every 10 minutes because guess what you want to do in chaos? Refresh. But every time you hit refresh and every time you scroll, don't forget it takes emotional and mental energy. And if refresh, chaos, bad news, oh my God. Just think about that for a minute. You're hitting the oh my God button all day when you're refreshing in chaotic news times. And that is creating the panic and the stress inside that is freaking you out. So as an example of simple things that I do, I only check in on the news twice a day. I would say news at noon, right? I'm gonna get through my morning. I'm gonna make the magic happen. I'm gonna move my projects forward in the mornings. If it's news that I need to know about that affects me dramatically and locally, trust me, I'll hear about it. My friends or my wife or somebody will let me know via text. But I don't check in on the news because nothing's going to change for me in dealing with the news until around noon. And I know people say, well, what if this is canceled or that's canceled? You'll hear it from your family. You'll get the news. But I don't check into the major media. I don't check into social media multiple times a day. I don't check into, and I'm talking about what people are doing right now. They're hitting refresh by the minute, by the 5 minutes, by the 10. How many of you are guilty about this? How many of you have been addicted to refreshing in the last 72 hours, right? It's easy to do that when there's chaos, but that's also the most important time not to do that for your own psyche, right? That's the most important time to separate yourself from chaos versus, what do? Reconnect to it every 30 seconds? Think about what that does. You cannot, doesn't matter how conscious or intelligent or brilliant or meditative you are, if you check into, oh my God, bad news 24/7, there is no human that does not start to shape your emotional reality. No human alive. The Dalai Lama couldn't do it without feeling that emotion if that's what he did 24/7. And right now, that's what we have people doing. And so what is necessary is to stay absolutely informed, but realize not a whole lot is going to shift in periods of time throughout the day. Now, I know it depends on what you do and how you respond in your career and where your family is and all these things. No question. So here's what I'm going to suggest to you. To stay centered in the mid of the chaos, you choose how much you check in. You choose. And then at a conscious level, I'd say back it up a little bit.
So, however, you're like, I gotta check 20 times this hour, but I'm like, okay, I appreciate that feeling and that concern. So let's just back. Could we check in just 5 times in the hour so you can actually get something done? So please don't think I'm saying don't be involved or don't be informed. I'm saying don't let the chaos eat you alive, because listen to this statement. Chaos inside grows as checking in on the outside grows, right? The more everyone's freaking out and the more you listen to all of it, the more it infects you, because there is also another contagion going on right now. And if you've studied neuroscience with me for a while, or you've been with me in this community for a while, you know how much we talk about emotional contagion. Energy spreads. It's like, listen, we can act without losing our center. We can act without spreading fear. We can act without the anxiety. Like the stuff that I have to take on a daily basis, if you saw it, you'd be like, oh my gosh. But I choose not to address it with anxiety. I choose to be in center of my emotional reality, the chooser, the captain of the ship. And I just want you to be that observer of how you've been dealing with this and choose to stay centered amid the chaos. I do things like keep your morning routine. It is so important right now. That is stability in an unstable world. Don't overly engage what is happening. Don't contribute to the negative energy in any way, even if you want to. Trust me, when I do check in, I want to say, you idiots, oh my gosh, what's happening over here? Don't be that person. It's not going to help your spirit or your soul, I promise you. Be the person who's centered amid the chaos. Hey everybody, it's Brendon. Have you ever heard that advice to take risks, but you felt like, well, I don't want to take risks. No one likes risk, right? No one wants to say when they wake up in the morning, I'm going to take tons of risks today. Usually risk brings about fear. We're worried that if we take a risk, we'll fail. Other people will judge us. We'll look stupid. We'll feel uncertain or unsure of ourselves. And nobody likes those feelings or those outcomes. So as much as people say take risks, it's easy for us to say, nah, I'm not into that. But we also know intellectually that we can't grow unless we take more risks. That your next level of success, that leap from this level to that level, there's gonna be risk there. You know, it's from here to there, and there's that gap in between. You don't know as you take that leap if you're gonna do well. That's the risk. You might fall, you might fail, you might not do well. But if you're not making those leaps and taking those steps, you'll always be stuck where you were yesterday. And to grow, we've got to have a lot of courage to jump into those risks. So let me give you maybe a framework for how to think about taking risks. You know, I always think about 3 ways to think about taking risks so that I'm continually pushing and growing myself. So the first thing I think about when I look at my career or I look at my life, the first risk I want to take is I want to make whatever I'm doing harder. I know that sounds weird, but I'm like, how could I make my job more difficult? Because in taking that risk to make it more difficult, I'll grow. I'll give you guys an example. Last weekend, I had the blessing to keynote a conference in New Orleans. Some of you all were there. It was at the Superdome in New Orleans, which holds like 100,000 people, but they kind of spliced it in half with a curtain, and they had 20, 30,000 people in the audience. This was for the Beachbody Convention, and it was a blast. Now, I could get up and talk to 20,000 people pretty regularly in my life. I'm doing it again next weekend. It's what I do as a motivational speaker, right? I'm used to doing that. But I could just go on stage, do my thing, and get off, and that wouldn't be serving the audience as much. And so I asked myself, how can I make this presentation even harder on me so that I can grow? So I text 2 of my friends who happen to be in that organization, Tony Horton. Many of you guys know he is kind of the founder and trainer for P90X, and Chalene Johnson, who does PIO. And I text them both, I said, what's your hardest exercise move that people usually can't get? Because both those people are gonna be at the conference, and this was a lot of their super fans, so I was like, let's go. So Tony told me, he's like, the donkey kick is the hardest one. The donkey kick is basically, you do a handstand, you kick your legs out, you land back plank position, you run your leg through like threading the needle in yoga, and then you return and you do a burpee, okay? And Chalene said, well, the hardest one is like, what she calls the PIO flip, which is like, imagine doing a bridge,
right? But then going to kind of one arm, and it's like you're doing a bridge this way and one arm goes that way. I mean, it's not easy. So I decided in front of 20,000 people to do those two moves back to back in a suit. So imagine doing a handstand in a suit, kicking your legs out, threading the needle, then flipping over, doing a full extended bridge. Not easy, but I did it because it would be hard. Does that make sense? Part of the reason I got better as a speaker is because I was pushing myself. I mean, I used to be, it's very comforting and easy to give a big speech and, have a transcript or all these notes to read from. But I said, one day, I'm going to be able to get up on stage and give a speech with no notes whatsoever. Now, that's hard. That's not comforting. It's not easy. But it's by putting challenges in front of ourselves that we grow. And that's part of taking risks. I always say it to people, look, if the only challenges you're dealing with in life right now are the ones that life dealt you, then you're not living a fully conscious life yet. And what I mean by that is you're living a life of reaction. If you're not moving if you're not moving towards harder and more difficult goals, if you're not giving yourself challenges, if you're not taking risks consciously, then you're just reacting to the world, you're not growing. And so challenge yourself. The next time you're going to go do something, your art, your career, put yourself out there, try something, make that sales call. How could you challenge yourself to make that process even harder so you get better? Obviously, you need to do that in the gym too, right? I mean, part of growing a muscle is stretching it and making it harder, making it difficult, pushing it beyond its current capabilities. That's how you grow muscle. Same thing, that's how you grow in life. The second big thing I think about is how do I do what I'm doing and take a risk by being different, right? So think about what I've shared so far. The first way to take a risk is to make your process harder so that you grow and stretch. The second way is to do something very different. I mean, maybe you're already good at something, but now you're going to completely switch up how you're doing it. Right now, many of you know I have a podcast. I'm about to change that podcast from something that's been very successful. We had top 10 for over 100 weeks in my category. We're completely changing that up. So for those who listen to the Charged Life, that's going to be switching up this weekend to the Brendon Show. And it's completely different. It's a new format. We don't need to do it. The old way worked fine. But part of taking risks is making yourself evolve, not being the latecomer to evolution, right? So think about how can you do something different. I'll give you an example. When we first started my YouTube channel back in 2014, when we really started doing weekly YouTube videos, Travis had this great idea. He said, you know what? What if we did our videos in black and white? And back then, nobody was doing videos in black and white on a weekly basis as part of a show, certainly not in personal development. So we did it. It was completely different. It was a risk for us. I mean, would it work going from color to black and white in the modern era? It did. And some of those videos took off. I mean, 1 million views, 2 million views, now some of them entering their 3 millionth view. That happened because we decided to take a risk and be different. So how can you be different in your category, in your career, in your field of interest, whatever you're doing? How can you purposefully choose to evolve and do something different? Because that's a risk. And sure, not all risks are rewarded, but I'll tell you what's never rewarded: stagnation. And then the last one, part of taking a risk is being more personal. Teaching yourself to share more, to be more vulnerable. It's hard, I get it. I'm in front of a camera, in front of stage all of my life. I shouldn't say my adult life. I mean, over the last 10 years of my life, it's been a very public journey for me. You see, if you're on with us on Facebook, we have 5 million fans on this Facebook page alone. Doesn't count our other Facebook pages. We've just started and we're growing our Instagram channel. Hey guys on Instagram. I mean, this has been a journey for me of being in front of the public eye. But even me, for my next level, I'm going to have to share more about my personal life, be more thoughtful about that. And that takes a lot of vulnerability. It doesn't scare me, I just know I need to do it. And I'll give you an example. When I first started my career in personal and professional development, because if you ask me, Brendon, what do you do? I always say, well, I'm a writer first, and I'm a trainer second. I've been blessed to train more people on the topic of motivation and high performance than anybody else in the world now. Our videos have been viewed over 100 million times, over 10 million fans across our Facebook pages. I've been blessed to reach a lot of people. but I can share with you when I began my career, I thought I had to be Mr. Buttoned Up, so proper. And because I came from the consulting world, if you ever had a real job in organizational America and then you start doing this, it's hard not to be stiff, and not share as much. But I remember the first time I ever shared with my audience back then, I shared with them about how when I started my career, I went broke. And I mean bankrupt broke. And I was in bankruptcy and I was struggling to start my career, do my own seminars. I had no idea what I was doing. People were making fun of me. I'm sure people are making fun of me right now on this live cast. You get used to that part. But it was new and it was scary. And I'll never forget though, that after I shared that, so many people would come up to me and like, I've struggled with that too. I've been bankrupt, or I came from poverty and I worked hard and I made it too. And people would share their stories with me, and it was really inspiring, and it taught me that, people won't believe your successes if they don't believe the struggle. You gotta share where you've struggled more in life, and that feels like a risk, but you gotta be honest. Does your family and your friends and the people you serve, do they know what you really think? What you really feel, what you really desire in life, what you're really going after, what you need? Because if they don't know that about you, that's not taking risks. Look, being quiet and avoiding difficult conversation is not taking risks, and it's not the path to growth. The path to growth for so many of us is another level of personal authenticity, another level of personal sharing. And if you don't do that, then you're not risking, you're just going through the motions. So I would say that today, when you're thinking about the next level of growth for yourself, think about risk. When you think about risk, think about it in these 3 ways, okay? Number 1, think about how can I make my process even more difficult? How can I take on a challenge that's hard for me that would push me outside of my comfort zone? Number 2, how can I do something different? I mean, even though I don't need to do something different, like really switch things up. And then number 3, do something more personal, share something more personal, and watch how those risks start rewarding your life. Look, we can all go from, an average person to an achiever, and we can all go from an achiever to a high performer, but it's gonna take some new habits for you to get there. And I hope that this conversation about taking risks inspired you to think about just that. When most people evaluate themselves, when they have a performance review coming up at work, when they've really screwed something up and they're guilty and they're thinking of all the other stupid things they've done that hurt them, when they hit a birthday, when they hit New Year's, when someone holds up a mirror in front of them and says, hey, you're being a jerk, and they have to really reevaluate, most people are not proactively assessing their performance. And so when it comes time to do that, they're disappointed. And so if this is not a basic habit for you, I need you to start scoring yourself at the end of the day. Now, people really don't like this one, and I'm just gonna be upfront about that. You probably won't want to do this, and a lot of people don't. But if there's something inside of you that is restless for that next level, we're gonna have to start measuring. If you don't measure it, you can't improve it. And the same way that most people, if you ever try to lose weight or gain, you notice, apparently this is weightlifting talk, but if you've ever tried to get stronger, you gotta write it down. Like, how many reps did you do? How did you, what routines did you do today? How much weight did you use? Like, if you do that in the gym, well, you gotta do that in the playground of life too. But most don't. And they're really struggling. I can't tell you, it's just like painful to watch. I'll show up and I'll tell me about your life. And first, they don't even know where to start because they've never measured themselves. And then second, in the dialogue with me as a high performance coach, I find them disappointed, upset, struggling, unsure of themselves. And a lot of that could have been handled if, on a more consistent basis, they were self-aware and personally accountable to their own behavior and growth. I mean, isn't it true? Don't you know somebody you wish, oh my gosh, I wish that person would stop at the end of the day and say, am I being a good person? I mean, isn't there someone you're so frustrated with right now in life who you would just love to sit them down and say, hey, you need to be more self-aware. You aren't paying attention
to who you're being, and it's hurting everybody around you. Jerk. We all have that person we wish they were more self-aware. But how do you get self-awareness? You just go to a meditative retreat once a year? Do you luck out into being a self-aware person? Self-awareness is gained by self-evaluation. If you want to be better, aware of who you are, where you can grow, how you can uniquely give or serve, we need to evaluate yourself. Does this make sense? So what are your habits right now for evaluating yourself? What do they look like? How are you measuring yourself and your progress in life? What are those? If you got some, virtual high five, I could be there with you. Celebrate that. That's awesome, right? That's incredible, because most people don't do that. So I hope that you are doing that, but it's a struggle for a lot of people too. So here's a simple way that you can end your day scoring yourself along the lines of, again, what we're talking about here, productivity specifically. You might have other ways. You might score your personal values. You might score your energy. You might score how much influence you had with other people. I'm going to give you some related to what we talked about, productivity, so we can get some quick wins and gains for you as we jump into more in-depth training. Here's what those are. I would like to ask yourself at the end of the day these specific statements, and then rate yourself. Low, 1 means you suck. Okay? 5 means you're awesome. You're doing a good job, okay? So let's walk through these. Number 1, I worked on things that mattered most today. I know that's basic, so I'll go fast here. Number 2, I progressed a major dream or goal today. Meaning, did you progress today? Number 3, I avoided distractions well today. Number 4, I set intentions before each major activity today. That's a huge one. Number 5, I fully engaged and enjoyed my efforts today, because high performers strive satisfied. They're engaged, and in that engagement they find joy, and they find fulfillment, satisfaction, confidence. It's by engaging. So how did you do today? Did you enjoy your efforts or not? Now remember, low, 1, 1, 1, 1, high, 5, 5, 5. Where are you here? So every day I sit myself down and I started scoring myself. This is probably about 7 years ago. And remember, 7 years ago, I was still then a certified high performance coach. 7 years ago, I was like, my career was just taking off. And what we want to believe is that people just kind of bumble into progress. People bumble into momentum. I'm telling you, high performers are more strategic and they're more self-evaluative. Now, many of them, this was a unconscious competence for them. They really didn't know that their self-talk was so oriented towards self-evaluation until I did some coaching and interviewing with them to discern that. But it turns out high performers, they're measuring stuff. Now, I just want to make it easier for you. So here's a simple tool. Just write those things down, then score yourself. Now, when you score yourself, at the end of the day, add your score up. So let's say your 3s all the way down. That'd be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Montana kid doing math. And it was right. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's say you're 15. So you add your score up, that'd be 15. Then multiply it by 4. 15 times 4 is 60. That will give you a score of 100%. Okay? Whatever your score is, keep seeking clarity each day, and you'll get better and better and better. Try to improve this each day. Look, there's going to be days you're a 2, other days you're a 5, but the goal is to ask yourself this. Like, I want you to do something, and if this sounds too basic, here's what I want you to do, and add to your routine that maybe you already have. Maybe you end your day with journaling. Congratulations, not enough. Okay? Instead, what I want you to do is create your own scoring mechanism for the end of the day, whether it's taking a page out of my playbook here, or you're scoring yourself, right? If I ask you, how'd you do today? And you go, good. That's one level of self-evaluation. But if I say, how did you do today? And I give you a specific context. How did you do today in keeping to your own agenda? That you might say, good, or pretty well. But if I say, how did you do today in keeping to your own agenda on a scale of 1 to 10? 1, you sucked and got pulled into everybody else's agenda. You got totally distracted. You didn't get anything done you wanted to. 10, you were superbly excellent today. You stayed on point. It's a different quality, isn't it? When you got to rate yourself and you're like, I was a 6. And then my next question to you goes, well, why were you a 6 versus say a 10? Then you can go, oh, well, because I made these decisions, or I allowed that, or this person did this. Okay, great, okay. Well, what would it take to go from a 6 to a 10? Well, I would have had to have done this, or next time I would do this, right? As soon as you score yourself, you have an anchor or a benchmark from which to move yourself and a different level of self-evaluation. So what could you, I know I'm talking along about this, there's one reason. I'm trying to get you in your own unconscious mind right now to be generating a lot of ways you could score yourself. Because for me, there's 50 different things I score myself on at the end of the day. 50. Now, here's the thing. I don't let my low numbers bum me out. Because the truth is, you know what? Measuring myself across 50 things every day, it's not like I'm a robot. I'm like, you know, it's not like I'm perfect in every one of those areas. But here's what happens. Let me tell you this. This is a huge insight, so please write this down. If you're not scoring yourself consistently, that's why you feel so out of balance. If you're not scoring yourself consistently, that's why you feel yourself so out of balance. It's why, you know, one day you realize you've been working so hard, but you neglected the kids. Why? Did you neglect the kids because you're a bad person or a bad parent? No. It's because you didn't have the quality of your experience with them on a radar, on a dashboard, on a sheet at the end of each day or maybe each week. And so what happens is, you know, life takes hold of us. We get caught in the stream of life and we're just kind of getting carried along. And then one day we wake up and we realize, wait, I've gone down 7 different, you know, river channels that I didn't anticipate, right? And so the only way to keep us there is to evaluate. And I think if you can do that, things significantly shift. So I hope that you'll figure out what is your end of day scoring. I'm sure while I've been talking, you've been thinking of other things. You could score your energy. You could score how you treated your wife or your kids or your team. You could score how much you stayed focused. You could score how well you actually made sales or how well you dealt with clients or how well you built your business. I don't know what it is for you. But if you don't know what it is for you, and if you aren't scoring, I know the next level is right there for you. It's right there. So put this in play. This can be your day for personal growth. This can be that day you committed to and you remember and you go, that was the day I got myself a community. I got better coaches. I committed to making my life the absolute best that I could. This is that day. Make today your growth day. Click the button on this page and sign up right now.